Hey, what's going on?
Hello. How's it going, man?
Good. How are you? Can you everything sound good?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Cheers, man. Thank you.
So 2024 is kicked off. 2023, we saw you make your Octagon debut, absolutely drowned your opponent, and then rest of the year, all that MMA stuff, injuries, all that. So what are your takeaways from the year?
Pretty mixed. Kind of obviously only having one fight is frustrating. Especially as it went really well, didn't get injured, didn't have any problems. So it's kind of a bit frustrating the fact that I broke my ribs before the next one, and then when we had that rescheduled change of opponents, then just one thing after another, kind of it just wasn't meant to be, which was very frustrating. But what can you do? It is part of the sport, unfortunately. But like fighting in January, it's kind of at least I'm starting early, so hopefully I can get at least three in this year, and we'll see. But it's kind of one of those ones. I didn't lose. I won the fight that I had. It's just I want to be more busy than that.
Yeah, and so I feel like when it comes to these types of situations where you're forced to be inactive, there's clear negatives, but a lot of people don't really talk about some of the positives, fixing up lingering injuries and spending more time with your family, improving in the gym. So, were there any benefits to this time off?
Uh, Not really, to be honest. I'm well. Kind of it was before this I changed some different things about my training, so it's kind of like I kind of addressed a bunch of those things, like changing like how much I was training, and the way I was training, which really kind of meant like I don't really carry many injuries, right? I'm not too beat up anymore. I'm as I've got older, I'm a bit more smart. I'm managing my my work output, like how much I'm doing week by week. So to be honest, like apart from a broken rib, which is just it's just one of those things that happens. You can't prepare to not break your rib, if that makes sense. It's if it happens, it happens, and there's not a great deal you can do about it. Um, so yeah, but at the same time, I got better. I worked on it. I'm working on my students who are like my main training partners. So it's they're getting better day by day. So it means I'm getting better training partners. It's one of those ones you kind of like it is what it is. There's no point crying about it. But if you get too frustrated, then you're just going to pull your hair out. The sport is not particularly kind to the fighters in many different ways. Um, it is what it is. There's no point worrying too much. Like obviously, you're constantly working, improving, and stuff like that. But at 35 years old, I'm not going to say I can't change or I can't get better, but I am a complete fighter. I'm ready to go. So, I don't need 6 months to improve my wrestling or this to improve that, sort of thing. It's all right. It happens. Shit happens. What you got to just move on and uh, and continue. Try. Like next week is the next thing, and also as well, like a calendar year is a calendar year. It doesn't. It's not a year though. You know what I mean? Just because the date is wrong. It's like everyone's new year is a oh, this is my year, this is everything's going to be different, whereas and the same kind of applies. Just because I'm fighting in January, not December or November, yeah, it's frustrating, and yeah, I'm getting paid a little bit later than I wanted to be, but at the end of the day, I'm still fighting within 12 months of my last one. It's not so long.
And so, like we said, the first fight you did have an octagon went as planned. You fought all around the country, all around the world, I should say, so many different opponents. And so now that you fought under the octagon banner, how would you compare that to other promotions when it comes to the production, fighter relations, just their overall operations?
Very favorably. Yeah, to be honest, I really like the show. I've personally been looked after really well. Like in terms of like the everything is run as you'd expect a big show. To be honest, like the kind of team behind Octagon is is a big team. Like I've fought on some of the biggest shows in the world, and like Octagon to me feels like the team behind it is almost bigger than some of those. Like some of them it seems like because they're kind of traveling a lot, they have to keep the team smallish, and then they have a kind of expanded thing. Whereas Octagon, I don't know, it seems to be quite a it's a fairly big team, but at the same time, like, it's a team of people who are working together regularly. So I feel like things ran really smoothly. No, I'm a big fan, big fan. It's the sort of thing like, I would recommend Octagon to other fighters. They've treated me well. The money is decent. So there's not much else you can ask for, really.
And did any part of the promotion kind of surprise you? Because I know you're more on the in as a fighter, but I think a lot of people are still, turning on an Octagon event for the first time, realizing, oh my God, like this is a world-class production with an amazing audience. So did anything from that aspect kind of surprise you?
To be honest, I kind of like they'd been on my radar for a while because I've trained with Carlos Lamola before, who's obviously one of their big stars. So I was kind of like I kind of knew it was a big deal, fighting out in Czech Republic and Slovakia. I knew out there it was extremely popular, but still at the same time, when you walk into arena and there's like 8, 10,000 people in, not just in it, like I've fought in 8,000, 10,000 seat arenas before, and there's been 3,000 people there, sort of thing, which is not the same experience. So to see it absolutely packed, and I would say like certainly their audience out there is a little different. They're very much like they're people who they're there for the first fight and they still stay till the end. Often with MMA shows, as like even the UFC, the first fight is there's it's 10 or 20% full. Guys are fighting in front of empty seats, whereas Octagon was literally it was buzzing the entire time, which I liked. I think as well they tend to have not small fight cards, but they tend to keep it around 8, 10 fights generally around the 10 mark. So it's not too long of a slog, like even when you're watching at home, some of the big events, you're watching, there's like 13, 14, 15 fights, and it is long, isn't it? It's a commitment, especially in the UK, if you're watching a US based event and, you're up at like some of the main cards start at 3. So like if you watch the first fight at 11 p.m. and then you're up, the main card starts at, it gets to be a bit much. I'm getting too old to be too much of a fan.
Yeah, because we all love martial arts, but after 9 hours, you kind of just sit there like, okay, I really just watched 9 hours of violence. Like, am I all right?
Oh,
Like mentally, like, okay.
I mean, you like that, just the volume gets turned down, don't you? And you just get, after a while, it's just like, there's so many of recent years, so many times, like if there's an exciting, big fight, an interesting matchup, and I want to watch it live, not the next day. There's a bunch of times when I've like committed, I've got halfway through the main, even all the way to the main event, and I'm just like, oh, I don't have the willpower. I'm going to bed. So it's nice. Firstly, that it's a reasonable time for Europe, unlike a lot of MMA events. But secondly, just that like I actually like the slightly smaller cards. Like it's not, but they're at the same time they've got the smaller cards, but they're not trying to price themselves out. They're not like it's an affordable show to compete on. It's affordable, like they do in the UK. They have a TV deal in the UK, but they also have pay-per-view. So like, but it's all reasonable. Like, I guess it's different for yourself. Like you're in a place where pay-per-view model is very, very different to us. But in the UK, like people do not like paying the equivalent of $70, $80 for a pay-per-view. That doesn't really like compute to us. We just, I think sometimes like that's where the market doesn't translate quite the same. If that makes sense. Yeah, people over here are a lot less kind of like willing to tolerate that. So like the fact that Octagon's becoming on terrestrial TV, where I mean that's the opposite. Like they're going to get so many people watching because it's on a channel that's so accessible, like easily accessible. So I think it'll be even bigger as a result of that. And I don't know how that business side works, but I guess they make their money in the sponsorship stuff instead. But who knows? Who knows? But it's generally as a show, like I'm all about them. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. I personally I can't afford an $80 pay-per-view for a UFC every month. So when you have these type of Octagon productions that are so well put together, and even on the state side, 15, $20, it's so affordable, it's realistic. And I don't know how they sell so many pay-per-views, but like you said, I don't really know as much about the business side. So I'm sure they have it figured out. But
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like like I said, in the UK they have like the pay-per-view side, but it's now on basic TV, so not even like cable. It's on basic TV, so you can just turn up, you can just switch on like it's on Channel 4, which is one of the channels that everybody in the UK has, um, which makes it so accessible. Which I'm sure like maybe you lose a little bit of pay-per-view, but also like on the other hand, like you're going to get so many eyes on it, so many people are going to be watching it. Like we all know, like kind of the UFC model has changed. Their model is not the pay-per-view model anymore. It is about the advertising, it's about the sponsorship deals. Um, and I think if the sport really wants to be huge, like other sports, like other mainstream sports, American football, basketball, football in the UK, football in the UK, the money is insane that goes into it. And it's all based, on the advertising because so many people watch it. And I think like Octagon are kind of, I just don't think any other shows have been successful with pay-per-view. You don't hear about any of the big shows that put on a pay-per-view show really being successful. All you hear is kind of meh numbers. And, you kind of, it's one of those ones I don't know if I feel bad for them, but it's kind of assuming something that's, like people, even the UFC, if big stars, if the card is not packed, people don't watch. Mm-hmm. Whereas I feel like Octagon now, the way they're going about it, firstly, they're not worried about that model. That's not their model. They're not trying to milk us for every penny we have, which is good. They're trying to make it accessible, which, it's who want to watch fights, so let them. And I think in the long term, that'll make them bigger. They've grown so quickly in Europe. In the UK, people know what I'm talking about. In Europe, people are like very familiar with the product. People know Octagon, which is like very few shows outside the, obviously the UFC, possibly Bellator, really have that, recognition. I think Octagon are, starting to build it.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. I feel like this is the perfect time for you to come into Octagon because they're really, pushing for this expansion into England. So how does it kind of feel to be one of those guys that they're kind of building this expansion around and you're going to continue to be able to fight in your home country moving forward?
Like, honestly, fighting in the home country, like, is kind of meh, whatever. Like, I've been on the road for so long, it's kind of, I do quite enjoy fighting away now. It does take a lot of the, not the pressure off, but you're kind of isolated. There's something nice, about fighting away from home. So, like, you've got none of the BS, bringing you down. Like, even any time in the UK or any local fighters and like will know the pain of like on fight day you get like 500 50 texts from people like, oh, can I still get in if I blah, blah, and they're asking you about stuff about getting in and you're like, yeah, nowadays smart people just turn off their phones, just turn off your phones because you're like, what world are you guys in that I'm gonna you're expecting me to respond to this? I'm about to have a cage fight. It's kind of just a weird thing where like so like UK fighting in the UK is whatever to me. Like I want to be the Octagon champion, not kind of the guy they try and force a belt onto. Like some Octagon so far hasn't done it, but some of these kind of smaller shows or medium-sized shows, they kind of try and force and get somebody a belt so that they can market him. Like, and that's not entirely, I don't want to be that guy. I want to just be the Octagon champion. I want to fight out there, because they're getting stadiums with 20,000 people out in Czech. I want to fight in front of 20,000 people. That would be super cool. And then become a main event over here, like I want to be the Octagon champion, not like the UK Octagon champion, if that makes sense. I'm here to run the whole show.
Yeah, kind of like Phil DeFries was doing in was it KSW? He kind of went out there, and then when he came back to the UK, he was a much bigger draw, but he's still a big fan favorite over there in wherever they're holding most of their events.
Yeah, 100%. Phil's like, Phil's doing amazing. He's completely like reinvented his career. He's honestly, he's got to be the top heavyweight outside of the UFC right now. To me, like I train with him, the guy's a monster. He really is the top guy outside the big show, and he just happens to, train with the number one guy in the world, which is mad. But like he's kind of, I feel like when I was up there with him, he feels like he's carved his niche. He's got a loyal base out there, and he's happy. And like to me, I'm like, that seems great to me. Yeah, be the king of a, you know, not. It's kind of weird to call KSW a small show because if you've ever been, like they're not, they're kind of regional, but they're huge. Like they do 20,000 seaters every single month. They do like a huge shows. They do, didn't they do they've done it twice, like a 70,000 seat arena and sold it out.
I forgot what the event was called, but I know what you're
Yeah.
talking
They've done two of them now with 70,000 people in there, which is as big as any UFC event ever. It is kind of mental, really. Like, so like, it's definitely a regional show, but it's a show where I know of a bunch of guys, I know of guys on these type of shows who don't want to go to the UFC or a PFL because they're getting paid absolutely fantastically. They get treated really, really well. Why would you want to leave to go and, like get on a significantly financially worse contract?
No, 100%. And I feel like the landscape of MMA in general is really changing right now because especially with Francis Ngannou, Shane Burgos, all these other guys that have left the UFC, Anthony Pettis too, just are showing, hey, there's so much outside of the UFC where you can not only succeed, but succeed more than the UFC. So it's a really good time to be a fighter.
Definitely. That the big thing really is establishing the name. Because that's the thing that really translates into like dollars, pounds, euros, whatever it is now, isn't it? And that is the difficult thing outside the UFC. But even in the UFC, if you're not one of the guys, then you're just another guy. Do you see Jim Miller's fight at the weekend? He like he's had so many fights in the UFC, but you kind of think like his opponent. I think he'd been in the UFC 9 or 10 years as well. And I'd never heard of him. Like, and I'm a fan of the sport, like maybe I'd heard of it. I didn't know who he was. I couldn't have picked him out of a lineup. And that guy's been in the big show for that long. And you kind of think, if you're not going to be the guy who stands out from the crowd, or even if you are, like you've been there 9 years, you won some fights, you've done some really good, you've done some grinding, some work. And to still kind of have a smaller deal. Like, it's almost like, is it such a bad thing to be a big fish in a smaller pond? Especially if that smaller pond includes giant stadiums and, your naming lights and stuff like that. To me right now, OKTAGON and KSW are the two biggest shows in Europe. And as far as I'm concerned, KSW seems to be predominantly focusing on the Polish market, which kind of leaves OKTAGON to be the biggest show in Europe right now. And why would I not want to be on the biggest show, in Europe? It's amazing. The other thing I'll say is I like fighting in Europe. Like my next fight in Newcastle on the 27th. It's just easy, man. Like, it sounds dumb, but when you travel to another country, it doesn't matter. Like, America is not the same as the UK. I hate to say it, your food sucks. It's just difficult, and you're like, it's just different to what you're used to, and it makes it a pain in the ass. Whereas Europe, nowhere where you are in Europe, it's kind of all like I feel like just we're culturally a lot more similar, and the food is way more similar. And it sounds dumb, but stupid things like that make life easier. European cities, it tends to be a lot easier if you don't want to hire a car for the week. So like my last fire in Bratislava, like I didn't hire a car because it's a small city. We were happy just either walking everywhere, or we got a couple of cabs, and it wasn't an issue. We rode some e-scooters. But like if you're fighting in somewhere like like Texas, if you fight in Dallas or where I fought, it's like if you don't have a car, you're going to sit in a hotel room for a week. And it's stupid things like that people don't really think about, but do make a difference in your kind of like your comfort on fight week. You know what I mean? Like if you've got to get someone you've either got to shell out $500 or you've got to get someone to drop you to the grocery store every day, then it's kind of, it just gets a bit old. I think I'm kind of a bit jaded and miserable about that stuff.
And so what also is the European, when you fight in Europe, a lot better for like the tax situations, which comes out of like your fight purse? Is that a lot better than America, or is it about even? Or
Oh no, way better. Like you pay way more tax than us. Um, like it's insane. Like America, is it's 30% base rate, which they take at source, which is like like every time anyone, and that's assuming you're in a state. That's why everyone wants to fight in Florida because there's no state tax.
Yeah.
So that's why nobody wants to fight in California. Everyone wants to fight in Florida.
And New York.
Yeah, New York. Yeah. So it's just a funny one, isn't it? Like everyone sees these big purses, and 30%, no, but the fighters don't see ever. And you know how it is. Everyone wants their little piece of the fighter's purse. In the UK, like base rate of tax is 20%, and it goes up if you go above a certain threshold. I mean, it's 20% for a lot of guys who are not making great money, which is a decent whack more than 30%. Octagon for me, like they sort out all my tax when I'm fighting abroad as well. So they do it all for me, which makes my life easier. You know what I mean? Like everyone, if I don't have to hire an accountant to do all that internationally, it's just less of a pain in the ass. You know what I mean? It just makes life easier. So yeah, I don't know. I think generally European tax is a lot lower than American, unless possibly some of the Scandinavian countries. But I'm not fighting there, so whatever.
And so let's talk about your upcoming fight. You got the #1 ranked Adam Palasz. What are your thoughts on him as a fighter, and what do you expect from him when you guys meet in the cage?
Yeah, he's good, man. Like I'll be honest. Like my last few fights, I'm having these good guys. It feels a bit unfair. Why can't I just have some of these heavyweight bangers? He's a good striker. He's got good kickboxing. He's in his last fight, he out wrestled the guy in ground and poundage. Showed a bit of a new wrinkle to his game. And he's a big old, big unit. He's I think 6'5", and I don't think he'll cut for the weight, but he'll be at the top of the weight division. Probably about 260. So, he is a problem. And he's got a lot of stoppage wins. He's a big unit. So I don't know. We'll see. Drag him into deep waters, bully him. Kind of use my experience in there. He doesn't have my level of, competitiveness with top level talent. And I think that's gonna, really make the difference. So we'll see. Like he's a big, aggressive guy. He likes to come forwards. He likes to put it on you. And I'm just gonna try and shut him down. Kind of death by 1,000 cuts, and then look for a TKO or a submission, kind of maybe in the second round or something.
Yeah, because I never try to be an analyst. I'm nothing near that, nowhere close. But I feel like watching his last fight, one of the things I did notice is that El Toro kind of let him dictate the pace almost in a way. Not El Toro. He dictated the pace, and that's something that you just don't let happen, right? That's what you built your career on, is taking these heavyweights into deep water. So it seems like a good matchup. Seems like everything could really go your way in this one. Have they confirmed to you that you're going to get a title shot, or is it kind of just like, hey, #2 versus #1, it's got to be a title shot with the win?
Yeah, I've been told I'll get a title shot with the win, and I'm hoping to do it fairly soon afterwards. I know, they've got cards in Germany. He lives in Germany coming up. So if I could win this one and bounce straight on, like basically do back-to-back camps, I'll be real happy. So yeah, we'll see. It's one of these ones. Yeah, like everyone wants to stay busy, but I could whip his ass for 15 minutes and break my hand, and then it is just what can you do then? So hopefully I'll go back to back. We'll see.
So what are your thoughts about the champ, and why do you think you can beat him?
He's all right. Hachimura, he's solid. Like he's likes to throw punches into takedowns, specifically double legs and ground and pound from top position. I think he's solid but unspectacular. I don't think there's much flair from him. I feel like just my game will just be a nightmare for his. Like I think he's going to try and. Nobody's really had much success taking me down. I'm difficult to take down. In the middle or on the wall. I'm a pain in the ass for people to put on the floor. So it's kind of, I just think, like matchups wise, I think I'm just a bad matchup for him. I think he does better against guys who don't have such a strong wrestling base. I just think he's going to try and take me down. He's going to try and force me to the floor. I'm not going to go down. He's slowly going to gas, and then I'll probably I think I will finish him. I think it's a really good fight for me, and over 5 rounds as well. I've done 5 rounds before, and I didn't gas. To be honest, in that 5 round fight, I kind of came out of it saying, "Oh man, I could have gone even harder." Um, so it's kind of one of those ones where I think I have, I've got 5 round gas tank, which he will, he might have done 5 rounds before, but he was exhausted. He was dying in that, that did not suit him at all. And it does suit me. Um, yeah, and I think, like I said, he's a solid guy. You don't get a record like his without being a solid guy. But I just think he just suits my game so much.
And so what would it mean for you to become the Octagon heavyweight champion? Because obviously you win any major title, it's going to be more money, more opportunities. But what would it mean for your legacy?
Ah, balls to legacy, man. Money is my legacy, man. No, honestly, it is. Let's be honest, it is. You want to be the top dog in, whatever pool you're in, you want to be the big fish, So why not be the big fish in this pond? It makes sense to me. And obviously, it makes me more marketable. People are going to jump on board, and like you say, there's more money. Champions get paid more than everyone else generally. And to me right now, that is the most important thing. At my age, you're fighting for money. If you're not already a UFC champion, people can talk about legacy all they want, but at the end of the day, if you just wanted it, if you wanted it to be an amateur sport, then we'd all fight for nothing still. I am fighting to get paid. I got a mortgage to pay and all that. So it is important to me. But yeah, no, it's being the champion of a good reputable show is cool, man. It is where everyone wants to be. Why would you not want to be the champion? Octagon is a great show. They market their guys well. The champions get really really looked after. And I just think they are the European show at the moment. They are the number one European show. A lot of people are leaving other shows and coming there because they're kind of seen as this desirable location who are looking after people. They're expanding, and I think they are going to have a massive place in the European market moving forwards.
So would you be happy if you spent the rest of your career with Octagon?
Yeah, oh yeah, I can see that for sure. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no problem with that at all. Right? Like I say, fight in front of 10,000 people, every 3 months, 20,000 people. Yeah, 100%. I'd be happy with that. It'd be amazing. I'm already, I've made a living out of fighting. Maybe not, as good as some people, and it is what it is. I don't bitch and moan about that, but now, I feel like I've kind of got into my groove, and I've found a sweet spot, and I can slowly grow. And right now, I think the Octagon heavyweight division is expanding. With more guys are being brought in, people, better challengers, better fighters coming in. And I think I'm kind of I can be the poster boy for the heavyweight division, and make it really the kind of the premier division in Octagon, and be the champion that people like to watch and people like to be a fan of. It's fun. At the end of the day, the sport is entertainment. And if people aren't drawn in by you, aren't excited, then why would they watch you? And if nobody wants to watch you, then what's the point?
And so last question for me, you have a killer's row resume throughout your career. Tom Aspinall, Johnny Walker, so many names. Who is the toughest fighter you feel like you've ever faced?
Yeah, I feel like often people, when they say sort of toughest fighter, it's a bit of a funny question, isn't it?
Right.
Often the best fighter is not necessarily the toughest guy. The toughest guy is often the guy you whip the most and just wouldn't quit. It's, I don't know. I think the guy I lost to first, Dan Charles, was a pain in the ass. He was a tough guy, and he never really kind of really got where I feel like he could have. But yeah, he was a tough dude. I knocked him down a couple of times, and he came back and eventually knocked me out. But it was an absolute war. We both went after it.
And that's all I have for you today. Stuart, I really appreciate your time, and I cannot wait to see that Octagon gold wrapped around your waist.
Cheers, man. Thank you very much. I'll speak to you soon.
Have a great rest of your day.